Fright Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
Well, hello, and welcome to Fright Night. It's on tonight's topic is going to be what scares us. We're going to talk about what scares us in all kinds of ways. We'll get more to that in a couple moments. I do want to let everybody know that it's an adult show with adult topics, and it might lean that way at some points in time. Also, we are recording a live stream as a podcast right now. So we have a in-studio chat audience that we might read comments from when you hear this noise. That's to let you know that I'm going to read some comments, so I just might read them off randomly anyway. For the chat, just so you know, we are recording a podcast, so we might not get to all the comments for various reasons. Now, I am Travis Sivart, and I am currently working on the Portal series, but I want to talk about one of my pen names, Joe Wilson, that I write kids' books under. And I have my 201 of the worst dad jokes ever. You're welcome. And my two kids' books, My Bunny is a Zombie and My Puppy is a Werewolf. And book 3 hopefully will be out
Fantastic.
at some point in time once I get an artist tied up in my basement to do the work. See, that's one thing we could talk about tonight.
Misery?
Tomato? Yeah, it's reverse misery. Yeah. Do want to ask our viewers
It is.
here in chat, what are you guys reading or writing? What's your word project that you're playing with right now? We're definitely interested in to create that conversation in chat amongst you guys also. Now, let me turn this right over to Aaron so he can introduce himself.
Hi, Aaron Kennedy, author of Persona Non Grata, the first book in the Ships of Valor series. Currently writing Icarus Black. I've been a technical writer for 20 some odd years. Been published in the Army Times, NCO Journal. That's pretty much it at the moment.
Very good. And Michael?
Hey everyone, Michael Thompson, author, illustrator of fantasy stuff and other things. One of those things, World of the Orb, portal fantasy adventure about a couple of best buds who sneak away from their field trip group and find themselves lost in a fantasy world and set on a harrowing treasure hunt to find their way home, navigate strange lands, cool creatures, and escape the gaze of a tyrannical warlock bent on conquering the realms. Very scary.
I want to write the flip description of that for you, you know. Young children steal a priceless magical artifact and stop the one man that's trying to save the world from destruction by taking control. You know, something like that.
Hey, seeing things from the villain perspective, yeah.
I want to let everybody know we do have merchandise available, and if you just type !merch into the chat, you'll see it. For those of you not in the live chat, you can find it at bit.ly/tavernmerch. That's bit.ly/tavernmerch. And also, don't forget our other podcasts and live streams, such as Talk of the Tavern, where it's toast, tangents, and topics, and Stealing for Survival, where we have our medieval fantasy role-playing game set in the world that I write Portals and the Downfall series in. Now, let's move on from there. And hold on just a second. I'm going to check something here real quick. Okay, if chat is seeing any slow in the broadcast, just bear with it. It will clear up in a moment. Okay, I think we're ready. Let's talk about this topic. What scares us? We're going to talk about books and movies and real-life events and all kinds of things that have scared us, still scare us, as well as refer to some of the people that we admire who create these things that scare us. So, Aaron, would you care to start out this topic with what scares you?
Ooh, see, I'm kind of unique. Okay, I work in HVAC. I do all the things. But I have no fear of animals, um, which is unusual because most people are scared of either dogs or snakes or spiders or something. They react in a funny way. Um, so when I encounter a dog at a homeowner's house, oh, okay, hey dog, and dogs is like, wait a second, you got no fear, even though they're yap 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 or whatever. Um, Things that the last time I was like really scared was probably about 15 years ago. I had to drive up to Aberdeen Proving Grounds where there's an army base. But I started driving through this town and it is just something out of Deliverance. Um, so I was just like, what the hell is this? It's just this creepy paranoia because there's nothing major. There's no Walmarts. There's no Staples. There's none of this. It's all still very small town. Um, Getting up to this base. So I'm just kind of creeped out the entire way. Because there's just enough normality, and then it's skewed 90%.
Yeah, that's the fear of the uncanny. Yeah.
Like the X-Men.
Hitchcock was. Oh yeah, the uncanny X-Men. Hitchcock was famous for the fear of the uncanny. Everything's normal, but there's like just one thing that's just slightly wrong, and it sets off your primal like fight or flight.
The first act in the series, the first act in the movie, The Birds, is that way.
Exactly.
It just builds up the suspense because they're just there watching you.
Yeah.
Now, have either of you seen the movie The Birds?
Yeah, amazing how you can take. I have not seen the movie, The Birds.
Aaron?
I saw his other one.
Have you seen the movie The Birds?
His other one? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I have.
So it's a fun.
Mhm.
Oh. Okay. So basically, it just kind of starts off as normality, and you get these birds, and they start watching you, and then they're just everywhere. So they've established a presence there, and then as we dovetail into Act 2 and Act 3, the birds are attacking everything. If you've ever gotten too close to like a crow's nest, or not a crow's nest, a raven's nest, where there's hundreds of little ravens in this tree, but if they think they're protecting something or they think that you're wrong, they will start swooping down and pecking at you.
Oh, God.
Right.
Mockingbirds do
this
this
happened to me
also.
probably when I was 10 or 11 years old.
Mockingbirds do this
Mockingbirds.
also.
Yeah.
But if you've ever been attacked by a group of birds, you can't fight them. You can't do anything to it, and it's just, what the hell? It's kind of like walking through a spider web in the forest where you didn't see it. You instantly learn kung fu.
Yeah. There's viral videos of people dodging birds. Seagulls. Crazy stuff.
So what about you, Michael?
What you got, Travis? Oh.
What scares me? I think along the same line, a creeping sense of tension, intensity. I really like dialogue that can chill you to the bone. I think within dialogue is a really cool way to explore horror, because that's the impending doom, and I think one person who does dialogue very well in their projects that can really chill you is Vince Gilligan in Better Call Saul, in Breaking Bad, the character Gus Fring, and as well as Walter White. The things they say, it sets off. First off, it's just darkly poetic, and secondly, it is very scary. So I love dialogue that can scare you.
That's a great, because there's a great one there. The 1990s movie Street Fighter. Okay. So friggin' M. Bison makes a quote. For you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. For me, it was Tuesday. Right.
Yeah,
it's
that's
one
what
of those.
I'm talking about.
He just builds this impending. I don't care who you are. Doesn't matter. But it's just that inch of fear, of suspense.
Yeah, it's an inversion of a joke. It's like a dark punchline. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Vince Gilligan in featurettes where I've seen him talk has sort of talked about that, and that's why he likes to go for comedic actors because they understand like for a dramatic work, they understand the sense of timing and rhythm to language and delivery, and so you just flip it and you have those dark punchlines, and that's where you get the dialogue that freaks you out.
Well, for me, what scares me is nothing anymore. Though I can trigger it in myself. But when I
Hmm.
was younger, I could watch Friday the 13th, even Freddy Krueger, and not really have a sleepless night at all. But if you give me something like The Exorcist, or later on,
Right.
though this was
Oh,
once I hit the point where I was no longer afraid of stuff, but if I had seen this when I was younger, Paranormal Activity. And what it is that
Yeah.
thing just out of sight, that thing you can't touch, you can't influence it. At least with a person who's going to stab you with a knife, there's something that can be done. You have to react. When
Sure.
there's nothing there that you can see, or there's hints of it, but nothing tangible, that's where, for me, it would push me over a line. And even now, like there was a situation, a potential haunting in one of my houses I lived in back in
Whoa.
2006. And all it was, there was simple things, little noises in other rooms. It could have been the house settling, or it could have been something else. But my son, who was 3 at the time, when he would come over, he always slept soundly, he started having nightmares. And whenever I'd go into his room, you'd
Hmm.
get that eerie, uncanny feeling where you want to turn on the lights. And stepping into the bathroom with the mirror
Yeah.
right there, I wanted to turn on the lights because what was in the mirror? Mirrors
You don't
of
want to
all,
see something staring back.
or
God,
or
that's a real fear. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so at one point in time, when my son wasn't there, I went into his bedroom and sat down in the middle of the floor with all the lights off. It was like 2 in the morning, and it sounds silly in retrospect, but when you're in this situation, it's very intense and very stressful. I sat down and I said, if there's anything here, it's time to come out, time to prove it, time to show yourself, time to touch me. I dare you. Come on. I'm right here.
Ooh.
And I sat there for like 10
Yeah.
minutes,
what?
and then I got up because nothing happened. And it kind of dispelled my fear. Then I went to go in the bathroom, and I'll be damned if I didn't turn that light on. It's but
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Well, go ahead.
um, it was. I didn't realize it right then, but that was a turning point for me, where fear kind of went away. Because again, if anything's ever
Hmm.
physical, I handle it. If it's not physical, it's not there till it's physical. Um, and I remember when it was a
Hmm.
year and a half later, I'm walking home 11 at night in the late fall. It's like, I don't know, a 6 mile trip home. So it's like a 2 hour walk through a dark country road with trees just 6 feet from the roadside. And you can hear something moving in the trees. And there's no street lights. And this is before you had a cell phone with a flashlight on all the time. And I realized, oh, I hear something. And I also realized I'm not scared. Either something's going to come at me or it's not. It's probably a raccoon or a deer, but even if it's a dog or a wolf or whatever, they're not likely to bother me. And if they are, I'll worry about it when they do. And that's when I realized I don't have
I mean, you
fear.
kind of desensitize yourself.
I did. I totally twisted fear with logic so I don't trigger myself now. Now, that all being said, even now, just a month ago, I remember these couple of stories that I've told you, these couple of movies I've referenced, and when the house is totally dark, I look down the hall to where there's 4 doors, a bathroom and 3 bedrooms, and they're all closed because we don't want the cats getting in there when we're in bed. And it's just this dark hallway with closed doors, and there's a attic access right at the
Uh,
top at the end. Yeah, Aaron?
Travis, I've been to your house. There's only 3 doors down that hallway.
But there's times I could look down that hallway and be a little bit nervous about turning my back on it. But I have to work up
Yeah.
to
You
it.
should be that fourth door.
Mm.
Well,
There
no,
is.
okay, so you made comment. You desensitized yourself. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to refer to a movie that's coming out any day now that's about a young kid that basically doesn't see the monsters except through electronics. Oh, here's another fun thing I would
Interesting.
recommend for everybody. On Hulu, there is a TV series out there called Bite Size Horror, and they're all 2 to 3 minute long horror movies. They're really clever and
Oh,
well
cool.
done. They're very good. So, recommend that. They're freaky. Okay, Aaron, I've talked enough.
No,
What's your comments?
oh yeah. No, you're fine. Friggin' no, but you talk about desensitizing yourself, and what you did, what you kind of did on the psychological thing was you turn off the lights, which bumps up your hearing. We're visual creatures,
Mm.
so but where do we watch horror movies? In the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Things are scary in the dark. The Riddick series is great about that because it takes the scary thing in the dark to a new level. If you can't see it, the only thing you can do is hear it. But our brain doesn't interpret sound the same way that we do sight. If you ever get a chance, go back and watch the movie The Exorcist. Okay, some of the moaning and grunting was remixing pig squeals. Okay, and the voice of the demon underlaid in that was the sound of pigs being led to slaughter.
Oh.
So right, so it creates this base level of fear right there because we know bad things are happening, even though we don't know why we know bad things are happening.
Yeah.
So you get this creepiness that's just undertoned on everything.
Mm.
If you ever want to see Travis just lose his mind, you start talking about cockroaches and make chittering sounds. It's not that he's one of the first times I DM'd for him, I used rust monsters, which aren't a big deal, but I described them as kind of giant cockroaches, and I go, this, and I saw him go, oh Jesus, stop that.
Yeah, that's gross.
One thing I have closest to a phobia is cockroaches, because in Florida we had the 2 to 3 inch palmetto bugs that can fly downward, not upward. Yeah, 2 to 3 foot long. Which, by the way,
Yeah.
in prehistoric times, there are records of 3 foot long cockroaches. We have found fossil records of these things. Now, if one of these 3 inch ones in Florida could fly at you and land on your back as you're running away, can you imagine what it'd be like if one of these came through time and flew at you and landed on your back as you turned away? When their mandibles are the size of your fingers, when their little hairy legs are a knuckle long for each hair, and the legs themselves are longer than your own arm. And then
See, this is great, Travis. You're doing great. Okay. There's more.
then they spread their wings. And
No,
you
this sounds like a
realize-
cave in Winslow 3.
I don't know if that might be a little too much for Winslow. Not the man, but the
Oh,
story.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. You get into friggin' the Empire Strikes Back section of Winslow, where things all go wrong.
Oh yeah. There's some intensity, but no, Winslow doesn't deal with too many bugs.
Yet.
Deals with like stuff of the sea. Not yet. Yeah. Well,
No, this sounds like a Scialpi problem.
Oh,
It's where-
Scialpi, yeah.
yeah. Whereas he has to deal with the dangerous ones, where Winslow's constantly dealing with the kinder, friendlier.
You're right.
So no wonder he's leaning.
Yeah. Scialpi,
towards-
of course I get the bugs. You know? Yeah. That's
But-
good.
Yeah, roaches are the closest thing I have to a phobia, but I've still watched
They're
things.
pretty gross, man.
Well, I'm not bothered by spiders. I'm not bothered by most insects, even beetles. I mean, I'll use a napkin to pick them up and put them out of the house, but roaches have that scavenger filth, and they have a smell. They have a stale, dry
Well,
must.
And the
to 'em.
sound.
Let's talk about the sound of when you step
when
on
they-
'em. Because the only noise these things make is when they run across thing and they go tick 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 tick. Tick. But the smell
Oh, God.
when you
Oh, you
crush
haven't
them,
seen hissing cockroaches.
I have, but those are less nerve-wracking to me. Possibly because they're more unnatural than the common this could be. And of course,
They're too unnatural. Travis is like, you're trying too hard.
there you go. A couple comments in the chat here is Video Garver says Florida's roach game is insane. That is true. And Weird Wind says, and then you hope the 4-foot dragonflies came with them. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
But when you step on them, they make a very particular sound because it's not a mush and it's not a crunch. It's some raised awareness of both at the same time. So it's at like if you imagine.
Well, you get a visceral emotion out of it.
Well, and there's a reason Oreos remind me of roaches.
You feel a dark promise on the wind that the rest of the brood will come scattering for you.
Well, here's a fun fact. For your regular American or German cockroaches that you see around, for every one you see, there is 300 others you do not.
They're nesting in the
Yeah.
walls.
They are. There's another reason I don't like my house connected to any other little filthy bastards out there. And I'm rather pleased that when I crawled out of my house, there was cobwebs. There was a spider by the edge of the house where you first went in. But besides frogs, not a lot living under there that I saw. So, yay.
I think what you did great there. Look at how so Travis is not a fan of cockroaches, and look at how well he was able to describe cockroaches and translate it into a fear, and make us squirm. So that's what you're trying to do as a writer,
Right.
is translate your own fears and things that creep you out.
Or if it's not your own, it's empathizing, putting your head in the headspace of the person and what they're afraid of, and seeking out those minute details that are the triggers that people don't even realize that's the thing that gets you, like the hairs on the cockroach legs and how they cling to you and pull at your own hairs on your arm as they move across it, that sort of thing.
You know what I really like that you did when you started saying like knuckle-sized for the legs, and I don't know what you did for the mandibles, but it was something similar to that. And that's a very good way to translate size as well, because oftentimes as a writer you might get to like, oh, it was exactly so many inches or feet, but to translate into something that's like literally right in front of them, like a knuckle, that's perfect.
Right.
You know,
Well-
or like a car, you know, if it's really, really big, it's like car sized or cat sized, you know, think about that.
That gets into some dialogue things and things that there's some gender differences that we use when describing things. Like men will describe things in ball size, like, oh, it's baseball size, softball size,
Interesting.
bowling ball size. Women tend to use fruit, so apples, oranges, grapefruits, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
The descriptive narrative, so when writing your dialogue, it's something to keep in mind there too. But it's one of those, oh, which is scarier, a peanut-sized thing or a knuckle-sized?
Knuckle size. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, because it's like, it's a part of the body, it's anatomy, and then so automatically, and plus, you know, this is a jointed thing that you're describing, so you went to a jointed thing as well, and so automatically it feels, I don't know, it's creepier. Word choice is very important.
And I think a lot of that comes from empathy, choosing those words. There's a lot of times as I'm writing and I'm like, wait, no, I don't want to use the word huge. I want to use a different word. I need something more triggering, more visceral. I want to use, immense or looming or something. It's not that looming is the same as
Yeah.
It's like you can describe something as wet, damp, or moist.
Right. Different, even words that mean the same thing, they have different feelings, and therefore they mean like slightly different things.
Right. So what authors or books or writings have you guys found do a great job in just scaring the hell out of you? What makes you leave the lights on when you're done with it?
Go ahead, Michael.
Sure. Well, I've got a Lovecraft collection that I was reading, and if you get the opportunity to listen to it and find like those old like converted, was once a vinyl, and then it was converted to digital, and so you hear that different sound
Crackle?
quality. Yeah, that ups the horror factor. Although like the monsters don't really scare me, I find the monsters cool. There was one story where it was just a human, and so just the human element with just a slight paranormal twist was really freaky to me. There was a story, I think it was called the Picture in the House, and it was just this slow reveal. I probably shouldn't spoil it, but it was this slow reveal of in the descriptions were so visceral, and when Lovecraft does dialogue, it's usually one character talking for a very prolonged period of time. It's not your standard dialogue, and just the qualities of the way the person's talking is slowly shifting and slowly getting more menacing, and it's this creeping menace. And when he does, it's normally monsters, but when he does it for people, and it's regular people but then slightly paranormal, and it's suggested that something's not right, that one was really spooky to me. The picture in the house.
I have found it's not the reveal, it's the build-up. It's the letting your reader or viewer imagine what it could be, because they're going to come up with stuff that's much more, which was one of my scare triggers when I was younger. I mentioned again Exorcist and movies like Paranormal Activity, where you just can't see what's there, what's causing this, and you get hints of it, you get suggestions, and I think building that tension, if we look at Aliens, or Alien, the first Alien, if we look at a lot of the classic...
Everything in the Dark.
Yeah, and Hitchcock was mentioned.
Hitchcock.
Guillermo
del
Hitchcock
Toro.
is great at suspense.
Guillermo del Toro. Now there's a guy who is like a cosmic horror, like Lovecraft fan, who's adapted, and sort of he's got that visual style where things are like.
Well, he's very reminiscent of H.R. Geiger.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so yeah, anything that's like that's like cosmic horror, where things are wrong, but on like a big sense, like you don't realize how wrong they are because you are blissfully mortally ignorant.
The unknown, yeah. Now, Michael, I think we started with you on that, with the favorite writings or authors. What about you, Aaron?
Oh, I've got a special place in my heart for Hitchcock because he does suspense so well. It doesn't necessarily have to be supernatural or anything to that effect. Sometimes the things that are more easily explained are better.
Like roaches?
To create that scare. Well, right. They're just wrong. Which is which triggers that human sense in our head of no, I ain't cool with this. I think Doctor Who,
okay.
the series, does this really, really well.
They do.
In that he always explains what's going on, what's here. It's not necessarily, the monsters aren't necessarily supernatural. A lot of times they're alien, but there's an explanation as to what's going on. If you go back to like the Matt Smith series, they did Vampires in Venice, where they're taking these girls and essentially feeding them to a lake monster, but they're becoming vampires. Right.
You have my interest.
Right. But do I have your attention, sir?
You have both.
Okay. Well, yeah, right. He does a really great job on this. We also see that with the Weeping Angels.
Yep.
Where you've got these statues that can't move when you're looking at them, but they move very quickly when you blink.
That's a great point that I want to comment on and then see if it leads anywhere. If we look at the Weeping Angels and Cybermen, of all things Cybermen, people find them very creepy and scary. I don't know of anybody that particularly finds Daleks scary, and I would really need to talk to them.
They're kind of a joke.
They kind of are. But with the Weeping Angels, and there was a few other things.
What was it? The
Adipose.
You go back to the Eggleston series. One of the first ones they did was like the mannequins, the plastic.
That was the first episode.
Those were creepy as shit.
That's another example of the uncanny.
See, this is a monster that you see the whole time, but it doesn't look like a monster. And by the way, this has been done. Aaron, am I interrupting? Did you have more thoughts before I prattle on?
No. You're good. You're good, because I like to drop these because then I can interact.
There's a couple of series, movies, books. Stephen King did a short story a while back called, I think it was called The Camera. Probably did it as Richard Bachman. And basically it's somebody who takes a picture, and each picture they take there's something in it very far away, and each picture gets a little closer and a little closer, and it's barely in frame. And this isn't all over one day, this is over a period of time. And I thought that was great because as you're looking at your pictures, this is back in the day when you had to go have them printed, not just, look at your viewfinder. Do you keep taking pictures? Do you try a different camera? Um, oh, see, I'm going to read a comment here. Weirdwin says, one of my projects is paranormal horror. The main creepy thing is never explained. It all hints all the way through. That's a great way to do it. King has worked with that also. Then he says, are you
Fantastic.
my mother?
Ooh.
Yeah.
What? So friggin' not explaining stuff is essential, because once it's explained, the fear is gone. One of the techniques that I use in persona non grata is I use minimal descriptive. Okay, he's telling a story, but he's only telling the things that are pertinent. He doesn't describe a glass. He doesn't do that because as I would be telling you a story, there is an assumption that you know what certain things are. He described only the things that are outside of realm. So the understanding between people. If once you start getting descriptive, it leads more into that hard sci-fi realm, whereas I do kind of soft sci-fi. Things get weirder. Michael does this great in Winslow. At the very end of the first chapter, we see just a glimpse of the critter, which is a great way to do things because my ability to narrate or describe is never going to be as good as the reader's ability to imagine.
Right. Bless your other half.
Yeah. In Winslow, what an interesting thing that happens is that chapter sort of establishes Winslow's credibility, right? Because that whole chapter is John trying to understand, trying to
This
grapple with his
psycho?
own, his skeptical tendencies and whether this guy is for real. And then we see it. So from then on, then you know that Winslow's for real going forward.
Right, but
Mhm.
he only sees it like anybody else would see it,
Sure.
just a glimpse,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
which establishes, oh my God, these are real. But he couldn't sit there and describe the thing any better than any other eyewitness. But
Mhm.
because he's the newspaper man, he's got credibility. He's
Yeah.
speaking from a position of authority,
Yep.
which sets the stage.
Yeah.
And flipping that to the exact opposite, this goes back to, or could refer back to the birds and that sort of thing. Weirdwin has mentioned a few things from Doctor Who that was done very well that a lot of people find freaky. Are You My Mother? The young World War II type boy who's got the gas mask. The Shadows in the Library, if anybody's a Whovian, you'll remember that episode. And the Clockwork Robot in that one episode. But that's enough description for me, who's seen all of those, to go, I know exactly what he's talking about. This is where you take something normal and regular and you make it slightly wrong, like The Birds by Hitchcock. And this is the other way of taking something. Everybody knows what this is. Everybody knows what a library is. Everybody knows what, a little boy in World War II would probably act like. And then there's just something slightly wrong. So what's your thoughts on
And
that?
that's what good art will do. You go and you watch a horror movie in the woods, and then on your drive home, you see the woods are looking a lot scarier since you watched that horror movie, if it did its job.
Right.
Well, I mean, something my wife brought up earlier is next week at Goochland, the drive-in theater, they're doing a Mad Movie Marathon. Your Mummy, your Dracula, your thing from the Black Lagoon. Those 6 big movies, the icons. But it's a drive-in movie, so it's played at night. What is going to be the after action when you're driving home in the wee hours, and then that night's sleep because you're mentally exhausted from driving in the dark and all that. So your mind's just racing with all these things that are happening.
Yeah, yeah. Terror in film and in books, I mean, it's kind of like, and when you see it in conditions that are appropriate, like if it's a stormy night or something like that, it's like it's like an amusement park, you know. It's a thrill ride. I remember there's this one movie that freaked me out, and it wasn't supposed to be scary, but it was this I forget what it was about. I don't know if I told you guys about it, but it was these sled dogs that got separated from their hitch, and then they and we follow the dogs and we follow the humans trying to find the dogs, but with the dogs
Seven
like
Below.
yeah, it was something like that. And so uh they had to survive. They were eating from this whale carcass, and then emerging from the rib cage of the carcass, because you're just watching these dogs eat, and the whale
Oh,
carcass.
that
You
scare
remember
jump.
the leopard seal? And then it's just out, and it's just this gaping mouth. It's like, what is that? You know, it emerges from the dark cavity of the rib cage, and his mouth is open. And first off, I didn't even know what a leopard seal was before I saw that film. And you look it up later, because it has these little trident-shaped spiked teeth. There's 3 points per tooth. It's the sleekest of seal that I've seen. So it's very very hydrodynamic features, and goodness, and very very big mouth opening radius capabilities.
Well, the other thing is that friggin' whenever we see seals or anything like that, we always see them in playing. We don't see them in fighting mode. They're not described that way. It's like we see cute little otter things.
Right? Yeah.
But when you actually see them as a wild animal, that contrast is so great that it creates this disproportionate reaction from you, like, oh.
Yeah.
And that's something that
A buddy of mine when I was. Oh, go ahead, Travis.
No, please.
Buddy of mine when we were on ship, friggin' USS Essex. This was when Resident Evil came out.
Oh. Okay.
Right. The first one on the PlayStation 1.
Yep.
It goes out, and you're playing through the game, and it's not a big deal until it's nighttime when you're actually off. You're playing it in the dark, and they've got these various jump scare scenes, which is what really makes the game work. Well, we're on this gray ship in the middle of the ocean doing this, and it's all corridors almost exactly like that. They're a little bit too narrow, a little bit too beige. So when you go to sleep, as people were playing this game, because it would rotate throughout there, you'd get the nightmares, big tough Marines, but things scare us. And it's just like, it was a great reaction area of, Jesus. He was like, nah, I ain't playing that at night no more, man.
That's why I always find it. You made a roller coaster comparison earlier. That's how I find being scared. It's entertaining to me afterwards. Once I realized I am scared, I start psychologically digging into it, going, what is it? What's making me scared? Because I am genuinely entertained and amused while being scared. And I want to know what's triggering this, what's causing this, because it fascinates me to see it happen. Now, we've already discussed tension, taking the normal and putting into the uncanny valley, which is the clockwork robot or the Are You My Mother thing. Even the weeping angels, they're supposed to be statues, but they're a little too real. So that goes into the uncanny valley, where human psychology, if somebody's not familiar with the uncanny valley, human psychology either wants something to look totally, absolutely human, or enough not like a human that you absolutely know it's not. When it's at that fine line where it's almost human, it's mostly it's wrong in our head. Instinctually, on our primal level, we freak out. And this is why certain movies with CG, especially an earlier CG, failed. Because psychologically, people were just disgusted or terrified by the characters on the screen. And that is Yes?
Part of that's also the fact that, you see it on the big screen, it's not a big deal, but when you see it on friggin' home TV, you see that friggin' the outlines of where they tried to do things, so our brain just shuts it off. It's like, oh yeah, it's fake. Or it's not good. I remember watching Eddie Murphy's The Golden Child years ago, and there were a couple great supernatural scenes in it. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. We find out one of the people that he's interacting with is a Lamia, snake lady, and then there's a demon transformation at the very end. Well, when you watch it on DVD now, it's readily apparent of how they did it. It was green screened or CGI'd or whatever, but it's not as much disconcerting.
The difference of that is because our technology has gotten better than the effects were. So, for example, if I take a really good movie and bring it home and put it on something that's not a high definition or a 4K screen and watch it, it actually breaks it for you. It doesn't show the effect in the way it's meant to be seen, where it looks seamless and smooth. And the opposite happens too, where you have the more primitive special effects, whether it's green screen.
Practical.
Practical, thank you. Well, some are practical, some are. They were the beginning of CG, or they might have been animated. And yeah, on the newer technology, the better definition screens, it does the same thing in the other direction. It breaks the initial effect because it's too perfect of a shot now. The effect didn't translate. And
something that's interesting. Something that I find interesting is this new or modern, I guess, phenomenon of the creepypasta, which is a scary form of the copypasta. So you have new monsters getting created via this shared stories or shared posts or threads, like Slender Man, and I think the more recent one that a lot of people have become aware of is Siren Head.
I know Slender Man. I don't know Siren Head.
Siren Head is the new one. So similar, it's that lanky form again. Is that long, like two long arms, two stretched out limbs. But he's big. He's like the size of like a telephone pole, and then he has these two sirens like in the place of a head. It would just this post, and then these sirens coming out of it, and he makes these like sort of various sounds, like air raids sounds, and
what?
other like
this. Anytime a younger person ever will look at the old Dracula, Frankenstein, or werewolf and go, "How did you people ever find that scary?" I really only have to say Siren Head or Slender Man, because really, how are you scared of those things? Go on.
It's the stories of the time, and it's kind of this active. And they're participating in the horror by sharing it and remixing it. And I think there's a video game now of Siren Head, and there's lore that's being built up. I don't know. There's like one guy who created it, but there's all these little videos that are getting replicated.
At what point does horror become comedic? I mean, because if you go back, if you go back and you look at some of this stuff, the more we see it, the more we become real with it. Sooner or later, it stops being scary and starts being funny. It's absurd.
That's a good point.
Like, you go out and look at Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger is comedic. Don't get me wrong, it's kind of scary in the times. Your Michael Myers or your friggin' Jason Voorhees and all that. They've jumped the shark onto what's actually scary. Don't go into the woods. Don't have sex. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't be alone. And you're safe. That's why we yell at the screens.
Yeah.
Whereas you go back farther, you got your Dracula and all that stuff. Whereas, the modern representation of Dracula, the contemporary representation of Dracula. Oh, he's in a dinner jacket with the peak and all that stuff. And you're like, oh, really? That's not. How is that scary?
We've always been afraid of the rich.
Oh, you have?
They all have the power, and they eat us for dinner. This is a whole thing. If you watch movies, you will
Soylent
see.
Green.
You'll see certain types of monster movies become more popular in the U.S. depending on which party holds control in our government. During Republican regimes, you have vampires tend to become more popular as movie monsters, whereas when Democrats, we have zombies rise up. It's a pattern we've seen many times. Now, mind you, once you're past before 76, the two parties had almost flipped right around there, so it might change before that. But, okay. So, one of my favorite authors that I love for, and again, I never call it horror. It's not horror to me, it is suspense. And I'm not necessarily a fan of this author, but I love his writing, if that makes any sense. I don't devour all
Sure.
his books, but I love the style of writing. And that is Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
And I again clarify.
He's an amazing writer.
He definitely has a gift for it, a talent for it. Even going back to his first books, which I definitely didn't like as much as I like his middle books. But if we look at even just it alone, the tension he builds in there with what's to come, what's to happen, what's around the next corner in the hall, and more so, what's real, what's not real. What, Aaron?
Well, the Colorado Kid, which became Haven on television, that's a great example of. It's an X-File-esque serial with just enough weird happening to create suspense. What's going on? What you're wanting to know what's happening next. You're wanting to know what the scary thing in the dark is, and then you get that release once you know when the situation's just resolved. But it builds up on itself.
Yeah, the art of the reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And again, letting somebody's imagination run away with them.
Up until that point, yeah.
Right. Then the reveal.
Or even like alongside that point. Mm-hmm. Or the twist.
You have the false reveal where it's almost a sense of, oh, that's all it was. And then the twist. Where
the red herring, the redirect.
Right. You have the, oh, that's all it was. As the reader, I'm okay. Almost let down. But wait, there's more. There's one more corner.
Yeah, just enough to put you off your guard.
Right. Right, to ease you down. And that's hard to craft as a writer without, at least as a writer, feeling that it's been, I can't think of the word. I'm missing part of my vocabulary tonight. Trite.
Experience.
Forced is closer. Trite. But yeah, where
cliche.
It just obvious. Like forced, I think is a good enough word in there.
Okay.
That you just drop this in there and it's obvious it's a red herring.
Well, one of the other things that we run into is because we're constantly reading our own work, we're constantly editing it. We've seen this 5 times by the time our beta readers see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was initially a great thing, we've edited out of. If you ever watch any commercials or whatnot, where the joke just doesn't quite work, it's because it was written by committee and they've seen it a dozen times, and they distilled a 2-minute joke down into 30 seconds, but we lost all the middle section that actually makes it funny. And we got to be careful about that in some ways, because what was really great and scary needs the least editing by us.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you want to establish the menace of whatever that creepy force is in the work. I think Stranger Things did a good job of that. Like before you saw the Demogorgon, and the guy gets like the opening shot of the whole series where he's like sucked up in the elevator, or even like when you see it but obscured. I think that's the great way to see a good monster. It's like you see the Demogorgon, and again, it's like the arms are like too long. He kind of looks like Slender Man when
I was
you
about
first
to say,
like see a flash of him.
Looks a lot like the picture you shared of Siren Head there. Definitely a Demogorgon body.
Yeah, I sent you Siren Head, but like if you Google or if you look up Siren Head, I think the better pictures of him are where he's like way off in the background and he's just a silhouette. You know, it's that weird mergence of technology and organic material, and it's like you know. So I think that's more effective, the obscuring.
So what about you guys? Favorite authors that do it well, or things you do to do it?
Stephen King's way up there because he kind of sets the tone of impending doom without you realizing what he's doing all the way up there. The opening sequences of the book we don't know what ripped the kid's arm off, not until much later. Because the book's this thick, You're this way in, and all you know is a kid had his arm ripped off in a sewer.
Goodness.
Um, which is great. It's a great little setup. Because one, I don't like kids, but two, things in the sewer are cool.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of those unexplored locations. Location. That's a good thing to keep in mind for your horror. And I think to bring it back around to the dialogue with Vince Gilligan, I like that you can take and to include some of the stuff we talked about with Doctor Who, and taking things that shouldn't be scary and making them scary. If you guys remember Tio Salamanca's bell, just him ringing his bell, that just became a terrifying noise within the show.
Which show? What show?
Breaking Bad.
Oh, I've only seen season 1.
Okay, I think he's in that. I think he's in. No, he's in season 2. Never mind. Yeah, because season 1 and 2 were. 1 was very short, but he comes in season 2. I guess season 2, the very beginning of season 2. He's this old like criminal boss, and he's in a wheelchair, and he communicates with a bell, and so he taps his bell, and it's very scary. They even did a little origin story for his bell in Better Call Saul, and they've had some now that I'm thinking of Salamanca, it's scarier. Yeah.
Nice. So what about you, Michael? You mentioned.
I remember when I was a little kid.
Go ahead.
I remember when I was a little kid, and we talked about R.L. Stine a couple shows back, and I got my autograph for R.L. Stine. R.L. Stine doesn't really scare you, but he creeps you out, and he does a good job of like making you turn to the next chapter when you're a young reader. And I remember there's this one book that was like a completely standalone book. It wasn't Goosebumps. It wasn't Fear Street. It was just called like The Adventures of Shrink Man. And it was like, I guess it was just this kid that just randomly started shrinking. And then there's this big twist at the end that it was, because they mentioned in passing, I'll say this because I don't think anyone here is going to read The Adventures of Shrink Man. But there was his friend in his class. She mentioned that her mom was a witch at the beginning of the story, and it was played off as a goof, but then like all the way at the end of the book it's brought back around. It's like, I told you my mom was a witch, and she was the one who shrunk him. And then it was just kind of a funny thing I was reading up until that moment where he's in this little, like, I don't know, like a hamster cage or something. He's being carried by who he thought was a friend of his or an acquaintance, and he's like, this is my life, and he's like this really like realistic. He's like, what am I gonna do? I have to, I want to like experience, growing up, I want to do all this stuff. And he's like, and he's lamenting all these things, and then the girl looks down at him, and she says, I'll take care of you. And it was just, it freaked me out. I was like, good God.
Nice. Something
I thought that
Weird
was wonderful.
just mentioned, he says, actually most fairy tales are really creepy and scary.
Yeah, the Brothers Grimm.
Well, they're warnings.
Yep.
So I'm a firm believer that sci-fi should be prophetic. It should be a warning of things that are going to come in the future. Right. Well, friggin' fairy tales are also warnings of things that exist out there. Whenever you draw a map, you have your compass rose, and you typically have a "Here be dragons." It's a reminder of the unknown out there. You're going to encounter dragons, monsters, omens, all these things out there that you are not going to be able to explain. Jim Butcher does this great in the Dresden novels, where he talks about, a certain percent of people just disappear every year. And if you correlate it to the feeding pattern of monsters, whether it's vampires, werewolves, skinwalkers, or whatnot, it kind of lines up. And
interesting.
The unknown is what's scary.
And I like what you described there, letting the reader piece it together themselves, because the feeling of revelation is always, I think, preferred to just being told something.
Yes.
In most cases.
Yes, and that's not an easy thing to do in your story, because if you don't lay it out enough, they miss it. But if you lay it out too much, you spoon-fed it.
Right.
Well, Sherlock Holmes does a good job of that.
One of the greatest examples of it. Go ahead.
Oh, well, no, it's one of those. He gives you just enough information to where you could piece it together, but not enough information to where you do piece it together.
Mm.
Right.
One of the cause and effect correlations that I love is the flying spaghetti monster. They've tied in the lack of pirates with the increase in climate change. And the less pirates there are, the more climate change there is. And they show, like they did a little graph chart with, this many pirates and it's gone down and climate change has gone up. And
oh, correlation, yeah. Correlation versus causation. That is funny. I remember in college we were looking at we were looking at correlation and causation, and there's one particular town where there happened to be like a higher density of storks and also a higher density of babies born, and so they were like, so if you look at these and you try and connect those, and so it's kind of a funny to connect it to the old adage about the stork delivering the babies.
Very good. Any final thoughts on this topic? What scares us? Michael, you got anything?
I think Robert Frost's "No tears in the author, no tears in the reader" is a great thing to keep in mind. Put whatever scares you on the page, like Travis described his cockroaches, and made us feel, that visceral reaction that he feels. Translating that, creating empathy, like you said. I think that's exactly what you want to aim to do when you are writing horror or terror or scary scene.
That empathy.
Well,
go ahead, Aaron.
Well, when creating heroes or villains or anything like that, always put a fear in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be their greatest fear or anything like that, but put something they're scared of.
Anxiety.
Good point.
Aryan persona non grata is terrified of water. There's a scene that I use in there after he's moving a ship from one point other in the water. Spoilers. But he has this release of a laughter, which I establish later on in the series. That's what his release is. But he's deathly afraid of being submerged in water, and it happens twice in the first book.
Yeah. Fear, scary, tension-filled scenes. They demand resolution, and that's going to make your readers flip the page faster and root for your characters if you embed those fears in them. Yeah.
And to wrap this up with my closing thoughts is, it's going back to what I said in the beginning, what Michael started on, to build on that. Empathy, and not empathy only with other people when you write a scene, though that's very important, but empathy with yourself. Find out when you get scared or what you get scared of, and use that as a learning moment to dissect it and find out what's triggering your fear, because then if you could translate that into a story, that combined with the empathy of other people's fears or anxieties or stress, it will play out much more naturally on the page. Okay, let's wrap this up. I want to say thank you for everybody that showed up in chat tonight. Thank you for all your contributions to the topic, especially you, Weirdwin and Video Garver. Appreciate you guys, really outspoken on this and loved it very much. Want to thank everybody else for all the bits, subs, hosts, raids, and the purchase of the merchandise. Also want to remind folks, my folks over on Patreon who support me there, Triple U and Ethan Strauss, as well as Berta and Musical Wizardry, that support us and the show on PayPal with a monthly subscription. And don't forget, you can send us what scares you to writenightshow@gmail.com. That's WRITENIGHT show.com. And I think we need to do a whole episode on fairy tales at some point in time.
That's a good idea.
I'm going to roll us out of here. You guys have a great night, and we'll catch you on the next show, which next week I believe we're just doing ghost story type situation. So make sure you join us for that. Okay, here's the outro.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining author Travis I. Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on Write. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right now.